intersect with your other identities. Would you like to explain a little bit about yourselves? You know, everyone's deaf here, but they might also have other identities that they relate to, that explain who they are. So I'm going to hand it over to the panel now. Yep, I'll go. Ravi speaking, I'll start. So everyone look at me, I'm signing, I'm deaf, right? Okay, so when you're looking at all of us, you can see I'm white passing, but I've actually got an Indian background. So my dad was Indian and I grew up and I had a strong Indian culture that I learnt and absorbed. Maybe you can see that in my work as well as a part of the intersections that I display and the cultures that I show in my work. So my mum later in life, she became queer, and so I'm not queer myself, but I am an ally and, you know, understand her culture and her experience with that, and I've really taken those different experiences into my work. And I think there's three parts that are really big to my identity: Indian, the fact that I'm deaf, and the fact that I'm able to share queer culture as an ally. And I've got some beautiful friends who are queer as well, and I'm really proud of that.
I agree with that. Shell speaking, that experience is really fantastic. Of having a growing deaf arts community, that's very much part of my identity. And the way Ravi said as well, that it's nice to be back here in Adelaide. It's like a second home for me. That's part of my identity, and seeing the arts community here expand, it's lovely. It's the first time, you know, I've been here as a deaf artist in Adelaide because my home now is in Melbourne. So thank you so much to William for putting this together and allowing me to experience and to represent deaf artists here in Adelaide. You know, there's other parts of my identity, and it's really, really fabulous that we've got this opportunity here.
Ravi speaking, yeah, I agree with that. It's also like a location identity too. Where did we go to school? I went to the Victorian College of the Deaf, and that really gave me a lot of strong connections. So that's really another part of my intersectionality, I would say, yeah.
Absolutely, William speaking here. Just connecting to what Ravi said about growing up in Adelaide, that location identity, but also my identity recently. You know, I'm from the Mags family, so I have a very strong identity. Just my face is my identity, you know. It shows, before I get to introduce myself, people know what family I'm from. You're a Mags boy because you look like a Mags boy, you know. So before they know my name, they know exactly who I am. So I'm William. Hello, everybody. I'm actually William. So first my family, but then becoming an artist and a creative. My family, you know, I needed to find, you know, my place in that. I needed to find myself in that, being part of such a well-known family. And recently, this year, I really found more about my queer identity. I unpacked that. I really had a look into gender and equality and all different kinds of parts of what being queer meant. Culturally, I've immersed myself in lots of spaces that have all become my identity. In the past, I thought, you know...
I went to World Pride recently.
I had attended World Pride recently and gone into the community, and I had my own opinions on that community, and when I went there, I actually realised that wasn't the case. I realised that sometimes my identity didn't match those spaces, and I realised that just because you're queer and I'm queer didn't mean we were going to be best friends. And the community is vast and as broad as any other community and has the same problems as any community. I think identity is extremely important, but I think it's individual. At the same time, I think our differences are also as important as our similarities. I think connecting with different people who aren't the same as us and exploring boundaries and limitations and shared experience, that is the key. I think that's part of the beauty in our identity, is that diversity. So they're the two key points that I relate to as my identity.
Yeah, Gonkita speaking, I have a bit of a similar experience. I'm the first artist in my family as well, and my family was a huge support and really encouraged me to keep going. But with my identity, I wasn't quite sure of it. In terms of identity, I guess I call myself a deaf artist is my identity. Wait, great, thank you for sharing. Does anyone else want to share? Jess speaking. So I've thought a lot about identity. You know, this year I become more aware because I become a politically minded person. So if you know, you're not going to get opportunities unless you challenge the system. And so being non-binary, queer, and I've grown up with a single mother in a single parent family, and that was an experience in and of itself. And you know, living in poverty as well is another thing that I've experienced. So those experiences impacted my art and my day-to-day living. Cheryl, do you want to talk about your identity and intersection?
Luke speaking. I grew up strongly. Where did you go? In a religious upbringing. We had a strong church community and a strong kind of church mind. And I was always taught not to ask questions. I just had to accept everything that was told to me. I did have my own queries and thoughts, but I was never allowed to ask questions. And I looked for any way I could get out, and then I got out. And that was great, and I ran. So in the past, my identity was one thing, and it became something completely different. Later, over time, I felt like I
was really tired.
Became tired of kind of having to switch my hats between two worlds, of the deaf world and the hearing world, in regards to working as an artist, my passions. There were so many hats actually that I had to wear. It wasn't just two, it became a lot. And it was a lot of work, and all those hats essentially became my identity at that time. For example, I worked for a deaf organisation, but you know, before that everything was quite cruisy. Working for a deaf organisation, when I had to put that hat on and then I would take it off and I would go out and I'd be tired, very, very tired of having to always code switch between these different spaces in my life and all those. So when I get home, I have many, many hats in the wardrobe, I'll tell you that. So my identity is extremely vast and diverse.
Gonkita, yeah, I totally agree with you. When I'm at work, you know, I'm not happy there because it's not like my space, my environment. I'm trying to work and I'm just working because that's my identity. So that's why I want to...
The art is my identity.
I want to continue down that road because art is my identity, so I want to keep that strong.
Shell speaking, my identity is most certainly as an artist, absolutely. And I found my identity through art, but I wasn't encouraged or supported enough for that. Teachers were most certainly concerned about my future, that I wouldn't make any money as an artist, and I was like, it's okay, I know it's going to be hard. I did finish year 12 a long time ago, in 1987? 1997. I did science, and that wasn't for me. I realised that course I was just tolerating but not enjoying, so I moved out of home and came here to Adelaide, and left from Melbourne and came to Adelaide when I was 21. And I decided at that time to leave everything behind, all the advice about making money, and I really felt free when I got here, and I decided to, you know, develop my creativity. And I sold my first art piece at that point, and I was studying at that time. Oh, thank you so much, yes, for selling my first art piece. And when I was studying, I sold my first art piece, and that was fabulous. And I had an art exhibition over in Melbourne, and I sold lots and lots and lots of pieces at that time. And I knew that it was possible then to make money from my art, and that's when I decided to carry on with my passion. I understood working 9 to 5 job, which I was doing here in Adelaide for 10 years. I knew that, you know, it wasn't for me. And so I gave that up. And then it was very limiting being deaf, trying to get those kinds of jobs and work in those kind of environments as well. On the weekends, after I lost that job, on Monday morning, I picked up my things.
My first commission.
And I was offered my first commission for art. And then that was the start of the ball rolling for being able to do that kind of work. And I was able to carry on making ongoing new art pieces and get paid for them. around 2017, I decided, no, it was most certainly time for me to go back to Melbourne. I wanted to follow my heart and where the art was and where the culture and the scene was. And I was able to, you know, transform who I was. At that time, I had to unpack a lot through my art and in regards to my art and selling my art. And selling my art in a gallery and a gallery being able to buy that work. So I have different kinds of art and different pieces that were available, and I was able to do that, and other artists showed me that it is possible, and these artists can do it as well. In a gallery or whatever format you decide to do it in, having people buy your art, that's what keeps us going. All of those experiences for me have become my identity.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing about your identity and the fact that the identity is not fixed. It's a lifelong journey. Your identity evolves, there's additions, there's losses, and sometimes we feel like, for example, myself, you know, I'm a woman, but maybe someday I'll feel that my connection to my identity will be more focused on my womanhood rather than my deafhood. And so that the ability to express the frustration and experience of oppression across those vast levels of identity is a way that we can portray that in art. And it's when we're looking at people, we can never assume what their identities are, but it's through art that we can really explore and see who they are as a person. And so it's always a continuing journey for all of us, particularly us in the deaf community, who all find the deaf community and haven't all learnt Auslan at the same time and the same stage of life. We all have varying experiences with that, but it's still, everyone's journey is important. Everyone out in the audience and on stage, and the way that these artists express their art is just incredible. My next question now is about autism. Autism is about oppression because of someone being deaf or using Auslan as their language. So how does autism present in the contemporary art sector? What does it look like and how does it occur? Are you happy to share your experiences or witnessing autism in the art space or sector?
Luke speaking. Yes, every day we experience this. It happens, lots of things impact this. Even when I was studying at VCA in Melbourne, Victorian College of the Arts, I was really excited and enjoying making art and to be there. And I was doing printmaking and there were some instructions going on and they said it was possible to get a job there and there was opportunities here and there and I was like, oh, that's great. I was getting prepared to do that. I was like, fantastic, I'm keen to get these kinds of jobs. And then later, you know, after applying for these things, I would not hear anything back and I would say, oh, what happened? Oh, someone's already got that job or someone else already got that job. And I'd say, oh, why? Why did I not get the opportunity? Or I would just generally not even hear about the jobs that were available because I didn't get that flow of chit chat that goes on in the hearing community. I didn't have anyone to tell me those jobs were available. So that's autism from the get-go because I don't have that same access to what's available as another person. It all just went over my head. That means that opportunity was taken away from me. Many opportunities are taken away from me and it still happens now because of that chit-chat. I can't hear that, oh, this is available, you know, this is available that goes on in the hearing community, or like maybe they won't even tell you because they know that your skills are better than them and you would be competition, so that's a deliberate thing. So that's one form of discrimination. That's my perspective on what autism is from the ground up.
Gonkita, yeah, I've had a similar experience in a gallery and exhibitions. I always say, oh, look, that's really exciting. I want to talk to them, but I can't. Or if I want to book an interpreter, I book an interpreter, but I end up chatting with the interpreter. So that can be a little bit of an issue. So I have to say, okay, interpreter, can we stop talking now? I want to talk to that person. And then maybe you get a bit of a quick conversation in, or you don't know how to start it, or you don't know. It's always like you're missing out on that opportunity. Passes you by.
Shell speaking. I have a very similar experience to what both of you have just spoken about. That chit-chat that goes on that we miss out on, and when I try to ask someone, excuse me, like, can I be involved in this or what are we talking about? You know, that autism really comes into play. That, you know, don't worry, later type of thing. And there is absolutely autism in that is discrimination. We don't have that access, that same access, and I'll miss out on so many opportunities because I simply just don't hear about them. There's a massive communication breakdown from the hearing community that excludes deaf artists. So I think hearing people need to be more aware of deaf culture, you know, and that there's an amazing deaf artist right there who wants to be involved, you know. The thing that I've learned is about being active, absolutely being active, active participation. There's not much of that going on for deaf artists. Like Luke said before about participation, you know, you're not participating if you're just there but you're not accessing any of the information. So that's, you know, my life. That happens all the time. I want to be involved. I want to hear what's going on. I want to learn from all of the other artists, and I have to use an interpreter. That active participation is fundamental to our success. William speaking. My experience in the art world with autism is not much, to be honest. I can't wait to be more involved in the art world and to be able to make a difference in this area. Later, hopefully I'm not too tired to do that. I believe, I haven't really experienced autism to a massive extent, but through the process of making the arts and interviews, and when we started marketing for Deaf Gain, I was really excited to have interviews, and they would email me and say, we want to contact you and do an interview, and I would say, great, that was fantastic, and they would say to me, can you get an interpreter, or we can't provide an interpreter, and I would say, no thanks, no. So already I've lost an opportunity, you know, of marketing and advertising because of, you know, someone not being willing to provide an interpreter. So they miss out essentially, but so do I. Cheryl speaking, just agreeing there, absolutely.
Ravi speaking. For me, in contemporary art world here, I'm not in depth and, you know, in that world. I'm really in the design world. That's my world. But I do like going to galleries, to exhibitions, and I do buy art, and I benefit from that. And I found that by becoming a purchaser of art, that's actually given me more benefit than me as an artist myself. So when I'm buying work, then I get that access. I can talk to them and say, hey, I've also got art, you know. So we need that. We need the money, the purchase power. In some way, if I go back and you know, for deaf people, it's hard to get opportunities to make a way to make money, and that purchase power is really important. So I need to work hard to get that purchase power to get into the door and buy those art so that I can get an opening. And so that's one thing to think about. Autism isn't straightforward, so there's, you know, ways around autism. There's different types of it, but yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Jace, is there anything you want to say? So I just also want to talk about tokenism. For example, you know, really big organisation, Ditchery for printing, and they're like, ooh, we want to read your work. And then when I was talking about other friends, and they say, yes, that person is gaining, you know, they're trying to pick out the different tokens. I want one from this section, one from that section, one from that section. So there's a lot of tokenism in the art world, really, generally.
Absolutely. William speaking. I agree of that example of just selecting someone from each community to have a symbolic tokenistic person then. I've got a deaf representation in my business, you know, aren't I fabulous? And then that's it, really absolutely no authentic interest in working with us or doing anything with us in the future or being involved in our community, just gaining from us, just taking advantage of whatever we're making and making themselves look good. It's about like that reciprocity is not there. We still have all these barriers and limitations, despite people saying they want to be involved. There is no reciprocity, and then we're left giving with nothing in return.
Thank you so much for sharing. Autism, like they've been saying, it can be direct, obvious, visible, but sometimes it can also be hidden and vague. And is it because I'm deaf, or maybe you guys have different identities that intersect? Maybe it's because you're queer or female or any type of intersectionality, and so it's hard to tell Same with autism and discrimination. It's not always direct, it can be hidden. So I really want to commend all these artists for still having a passion for art when they're trying to get in the door but have to face all these barriers. So any of these artists could have given up at any time, but they haven't. They've really done it. So when their energy is low, we need to be there to make them feel more empowered to go out and keep doing the work that they are. And so we have a bit of a last question, and then we'll open it up to the floor for a couple of questions from the audience. So we know that you have a deaf identity, but how does your deaf identity intertwine with your arts practice, or does it not? Is it very opposite?
I'll start with him speaking. So my art identity is not really, entwined with my deaf identity. There's so much involved with my art. When someone, says, I want you to make art for the deaf community, sometimes I don't want to unpack everything that's been involved with being deaf. I want to put that in a nice little box, and I want to make some other art that I enjoy just for fun and that is, more freeing. Usually I would use like therapy to unpack something like that and keep it in that nice little box, but definitely not through my art. And opening up that box is terrifying, so I like to keep that box very separate from my art. So my art, as you've seen Chasing Lips, obviously that's got some representation of the hearing world and how I've had to navigate that as a deaf person. So in that context, yes, I have included it in my art before. But is it absolutely intertwined, and are they the same thing, my deaf identity and my creative identity? Absolutely not. My answer is I just have my own way of managing it, and they are quite separate. I agree with William, Shell speaking. There's a lot to unpack in regards to deaf identity. I feel like sometimes you need a space from that and focus on something different, not just always be the deaf Shell, deaf all the time. It's very important to me, my personal experiences, building a house, having a car, there's so much else, in my life, events that happen, that are all symbolic and significant, and all the experiences in my life are encapsulated in my art, not just my deafness. It's not just focused on deaf every time. Exactly what William said. Yeah, sometimes it does come into it, but there's a lot of trauma involved in being deaf and an upbringing, depending on who you are. But to have to go back into that every time you make art, it's too much. It brings up too much, brings up anger, disappointment, a realization that, I had a realization through COVID. Lots of things came to the surface, and I knew I had to move forward into other areas as well. And, I've been encouraged to do that, and that's been wonderful. My, deaf work is still there. I still do focus on deaf things, but sometimes I have to move away from that and come back to it. You're right, William, there's a lot of trauma associated with that.
Does anyone else want to answer? Anyone want to talk about it? Yep, Ravi speaking. So my artwork is not really integrated with my deaf identity. I think the basis of that is because my art is really in the design world. So I can sort of really go between the two worlds to match whatever the client wants and whatever their needs are and what their identity is. So my job is to create their client's identity and put that into the design. And then with my own artwork, I really haven't unpacked my own identity. I'm not sure if I do want to. I do have other ways of doing that in my art, and I've got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, I don't want to use my deaf identity in art. I know there's no problem with that, no, not at all, but I don't want to, because I want to focus on it as art as art. And then, once people buy it, and that was really validating for me when people buy my art that's just art and not integrated with my deaf identity. I just want to talk about, you have got some deaf power that's been integrated into your work. You can have two spaces. You can have your art and you can have your deaf power space. It doesn't all have to be integrated. Ravi actually had a talk last night about deaf power and the symbolism, that the fact that it doesn't always have to be integrated in everything that we do. Gonquita talking about. Yes, I paint hands, and you would say that that's deaf art. And it's not, you know, you can link with my deaf identity, but it's actually focused on Auslan as well. It's about me encouraging inclusivity as well and really broadening it out to language. And I've seen, you know, it be very successful when hearing people come up, see my art, and then look at their hands. And I think that's really good. I think that's a great way to encourage hearing people to show them about Auslan and sign language. It's a beautiful language. It's not just something to look at. Yes, it's beautiful to look at, but see the beauty and see how the colour is there and how to give the art more emotion through those other techniques. All right.
Luke speaking. Sorry, I was a little distracted. I think it's gone out of my head. No, okay, I'm back. For me, personally, my deaf identity is not my art. It's not the same thing. As you said, there's a lot of unpacking. We've got 5 senses, you know, smell, sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. So I've got 4. So I don't have the hearing, but I do have the other 4. So my work is more focused on the things that I do have, not what I don't have. I would say it's an underlying thing that's always there, but it's not necessarily the focus of what I'm doing at all. My sight and my vision, my eyes are most certainly connected to my art. Is it my identity? I'm not sure. Sensory kind of elements, yeah. I see something that I love. I see portraits that I love or faces that I love. So I'd say, like, perhaps sense-wise, my vision is what's connected to my art, not my deafness. The deafness is underlying and it's at the bottom. It's not right at the surface. Yeah, I think so, anyway.
Is there anything you want to add from your art, your perspective? Yeah, I feel like all of my identities are involved in my art practice. For example, I've got endo or PMDD issues, and so sometimes I'm staying in bed, you know, and I feel like, what can I do in bed? So I draw or I sew or I make a lot of art from my bed when I have those experiences. Or because of my ADHD, I make a lot of things that involve hands that are moving, you know. It's always about movement, movement, movement. Yeah, that's it. Oh, wow, really interesting to hear what their influences are and how it's different for everyone. Health, life, identity, the influences of our capacity, our interests, and our journey. So thank you all for sharing and unpacking that today. Now I'm going to give it over to the audience. And I'll let you know that there's a camera that's being live streamed. So if anyone has any questions, you can either sign the question. If you could stand up and sign it, I am going to sign it back to the interpreters for you so that they can speak. Or if you like, you can come up to the front and sign. I just want to let you know that if you do wish to come on stage, you will be on live stream. If you want to speak your question, then you can stay where you are and speak it out loud, and then the interpreters will hear it and sign it from there. So if you have a question, put your hand up and maybe ask to the specific artist that you're asking for, or a general question for anyone. If you can put your hand up, I think I've already seen one, but would you like to speak or sign your question?
If you had to meet a famous artist, who would it be and why? William speaking. Oh, Shell speaking. Shell, you go ahead. Oh, I've got a funny answer. I would say Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, because I'd want to know if they were gay. I'd want to know. I'd want to make sure I had the real answer. I want that queer history from the art world. I'd be like, are you gay? I knew you were gay. That's who I'd want to meet. Shell speaking. Well, I'd like to recognise deaf artists that I have been influenced by in my life. You know,
Literal.
Yeah, I got that. You know, there's a lot of literal art and a lot of literal artists, but you know, there's some questions that, you know, need to be answered through art, and I would love to give people, you know, I like the complexity and the opportunity and the questions you could ask to someone, as in the same way that I give information through my artwork. So it would be nice to go back in time to do that.
Ravi speaking. I have the really lucky fortune to become a friend to Christine Sum Kim, and she was deaf identity, and she really integrated her identity into her artwork, and I was really fortunate to know her. Gonkita question, it's really an interesting question because recently I've been involved in a lot different of art, and I was actually involved in the Darwin Street Festival, and I actually met quite a few artists, and now they already knew who I was before I had met them, and I was a bit like, oh, you already know who I am? So yeah, it's been very fortunate.
Yeah, it's Shell speaking, absolutely. I've had a few people come up to me and know who I was as well. Luke, did you have an answer? Oh.
I'm fluid, it's always changing.
I'm pretty flexible with that. There's a lot of people I'd like to meet. I'm not really sure. Every day I express myself through art. I just use that as my guide.
Maybe Shell Man, because she, you know, is deaf, beautiful. Yeah, so I'd like to work with her. Yeah, I can introduce you, you know. So there's so much diversity. Some people wanted to meet hearing artists, some people wanted to meet deaf artists, some wanted to meet those who are already dead. So it was real inspiration. Okay, do we have any other questions? Maybe we'll have time for 2 more questions. We've got one right at the back. Do you want to speak or sign?
William speaking. The art is for sale, just to be clear, just to let you know. So please buy art. Buy everyone's art. Please buy it all. Buy all the art. That would be great. Support all the artists.
Just for everyone's benefit, so I'll just add a little bit. Thank you so much. What a wonderful question. I was planning to talk a little bit more about that before the break, but you've already noted that. Yes, depending on the artist, if you're keen, you can certainly approach the artist today and see and ask if what's on display is for sale, or have a look at some of their other art and if that's on sale. If you've missed out, then you can contact the organisers of today, and we can't promise that all of the art is for sale. It's up to the individual artist. Ravi, just speaking, for everyone's benefit, can everyone put their hands up who wants to sell their art today? Yeah? Oh, here. That's here. Put your hands up. No,
sorry, William speaking, my art's already sold. Sorry about that.
Okay, so quite a few.
One thing, sorry. I'm selling my prints though, so you can go ahead and buy those.
Is that Chasing Lips?
Yeah, my Chasing Lips prints, the laughing prints.
Okay, I've just got one small piece that I've made that's not for sale, but the other works are for sale. So you better buy it today, otherwise I'll take it to Melbourne and it'll be very expensive to post it over.
There you go, expensive to post, William speaking.
Thank you.
Great question, William speaking.
Okay, would you like to answer the earlier question about our industry expecting it's the deaf person's responsibility to bring the interpreter? Does anyone want to answer that question? Ravi speaking, yes. Yeah, my answer is yes. So with so many schools teaching many different languages. It's applicable, yes, but Auslan is here in Australia. It's a recognised language, so it'd be lovely to see more people use and learn the language. So I had the opportunity to speak with more people so that we could, have that conversation and collaboration. Gonkita too, it's not about becoming fluent, the basics is enough.
William agreeing, Luke agreeing.
Thank you so much for your questions. I've got another question here, I'm going to relay it. So I have a little bit of a struggle with, at the moment I have a struggle. Like you were talking about how we have to compensate for the hearing well. Does that make you feel exhausted or tired? And how do you get your energy refilled? How do you do that through your deaf connection when you're feeling exhausted and trying to, match the expectations of the hearing world? How do you re-empower yourself again?
Do you want to talk first, William speaking?
Gonkita speaking. So you always need a time out. So after night, once you finish work, you go home, and then it's just to be like, oof, maybe go get a beer or water, just relax. Go for a walk. A short walk is not enough for me. I need to walk a long dog. I've got a crazy dog, so we need to walk a long time, and it's lucky for him that we both match each other's energy. And once I come back to my own space, I'm feeling better after that.
William speaking. I find a safe space in the deaf community because our first language is Auslan, and I don't have to think. So that's my space. That means that you can be free and relaxed and calm. We need more of that safe space provided in the community to be able to decompress.
Yeah, it's like we need a deaf shot. Yeah, we need to go to a deaf space to be fully immersed, and that's where we get our energy back from. Ravi speaking. I think everyone has their own different ways of how to refuel and re-empower themselves. Sometimes for me, it's not the same way. Sometimes I have opposite things that I need to do. Sometimes I need to go out and chat. Sometimes I need to stay home and be quiet. They're two different ways of refueling myself. So sometimes they're the opposite. Sometimes I'm at home and I'm like, oh, I'm really flat and I need to go out to refuel myself. Sometimes I've talked too much and chatted too much and I need to go home to refuel myself. So it's about finding your own ways of doing that. Drizana, okay, it's time. I know we still have another part of the program to complete, but we need another break for today. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you to the panel for sharing your experiences, your journey, your identity. We could ask you questions all day and all night, but it is time to wrap up. Again, if anyone is keen on their art, please approach the artist. Maybe it's some of the art here or somewhere else, or if you want to talk about projects, collaboration or funding, there's no limit to what you could discuss. So again, I really want to acknowledge that it's happy National Week of Deaf People and happy International Day of Sign Languages. We have so much to be proud of and so much to celebrate and in this collective culture. I love our collaboration and ways we work together. So just if you head up and outside, there's a bar that has been popped up. You can have a free drink, so grab a drink or a non-alcoholic drink and feel free to chat to the artists in the gallery. And then after, we will have a presentation from Shell. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but we will have a presentation from Shell after the break. So come back into this space when you are ready. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.